Okay, yeah. Hi all, welcome to another kingscrusher radio show. So we're going to look this week at interesting Hikaru Nakamura games from Gibraltar, which I've been checking over. So the first game against Mariya Muzychuk, who was Women's World Champion last year, a very strong women's player. Let's see, Knight F3 from Nakamura, and we have D5 for Mariya Muzychuk. If you want, I'll try and get the pronunciation from. This is from ChessGames.com.
Mariya Muzychuk.
Yes, that's much better than mine. So
Mariya Muzychuk.
That's how you pronounce it. Okay, so she's playing black. We have D4, Knight F6, and we have this Slav variation C4, C6. Nakamura steers to a very dynamic variation. We have Knight C3, E6, so this dreaded triangle of the Slav, very solid. But we have this move E3, and this is actually very, very aggressive E3 here. You might not think so because it closes in the bishop, but it's the follow-up ideas. It stabilizes D4. White preparing quite often move Queen C2 because the C4 pawn is protected by the bishop, and then something very, very aggressive. I won't spoil it totally. Knight Bd7, Queen C2, and this is quite trendy. I'll connect to live book as well. We have Bishop D6. This is the top move, and yeah, I mean the most often played move is actually Bishop D3 apparently, or Bishop E2 or B3. But there's a very dynamic, aggressive move, which I believe Magnus Carlsen's played at least once or twice as well. What would be an aggressive opening choice here for Nakamura to fit Nakamura's style? White to play. There's a very interesting opening choice move here, which is not the most popular, but I would say it's quite trendy if you want to try and win with white. Quite aggressive. Can you think what you consider playing in this position? I believe I have played it myself as well with a bit of success, at least once in an over the board game. So this position, what do you think is an interesting move here? If I give you 20 seconds, just from an opening theoretical perspective. Okay, G4. Yeah, this has been played by even like Carlsen in his youth, and also Engines. There's an engine game on the channel which had this G4. Well, they were forced to play it, so it's pretty dynamic stuff. Trying to offer a pawn to get G-file pressure, and quite often taking on C4. I think Sparov played that actually against Michael Adams, if I'm not mistaken. That might be the top move. The second, which was played, was H6. If black does take, then there's a bit of dynamic stuff going on here. This sort of position is quite dynamic. Compensation for the pawn. So anyway, G4, and we have black playing H6, just stopping G5. So Rook G1, and now we see E5. And quite often C takes D5 is played in this position, but Nakamura chooses, actually he plays Bishop D2. Actually, let me put on the Kibitzer as well, just in case things get tense. And now black played E4, and it looks almost like a French defense in reverse. If you look at this pawn chain, it's like a French defense in reverse. The knight hasn't got too many squares to go to. In fact, H4 seems the only one worth considering. And it's threatening Knight F5 here. So black parries that with G6 in this position. Although maybe castling could be considered. It looks scary to allow the knight to come to F5, but this idea, yeah, you wouldn't really want to play this against Nakamura with the knight on F5, But on the other hand, you know, white's position is a bit cut off from the king with this pawn chain, so it might not be that bad. But in the game we get a committal decision instead. Remember, pawns don't go backwards. We have this move g6. So I think this is quite a committal decision. Of course, it stops the knight going to f5, and this pawn's still this is potentially vulnerable. Also, this knight might be vulnerable to some discovered attack. White plays h3 here. Now we have a6, trying to dissuade maybe, or say that, you know, b5, if white ever castles queenside, black's going to get some counterplay. But after castles b5, white tries to close things with c5. Black now plays an interesting forcing move, bishop h2. Nakamura responds, rook h1, bishop drops back. And if you play the French defense, you know that it's quite often about blowing up the opponent's pawn structure in the center, and here it's like white's playing the French defense with like extra tempo. So what would be a good way to try and destroy or undermine the black pawn center? If I said what would be the most natural, you know, pawn chain undermining move, so white's play, that's quite a big clue actually. So what would be a good way to undermine this pawn chain, do you think? What would you consider here? I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. This is not a trick question. I'm not asking for a spectacular move, by the way. Yeah, the undermining move, you know, if you want to undermine a pawn chain, you know, at its base, or sometimes you attack it at its head, you can't get to its base here. Base is c6. Sometimes you have to hit a pawn chain from the head pawn. So we have f3. Now we've played a5. And it gets really interesting because black's idea looks to be quite clever on the surface. That if takes, then there's b4, and black should get a nice knight on e4, right? If this knight has to move. So we get this f takes e4, and of course black doesn't want to play d takes. That's not the idea, because then just knight takes, yeah, just winning a pawn for nothing. Because note, the king's in the center. It's not like, you know, that doesn't help because it's like check. So that'll be just winning a pawn for nothing. No, black's idea here was b4, and things get a bit interesting now. Very interesting. Quite complicated. Or is it? What would you play in this position to undermine the pawn chain? And this is, although the same sort of question, slightly harder. White's play again to undermine the chain. 20 seconds. What would you play here with white? If you had white, undermine this pawn chain. Although your knight's attacked, does that change things? Can you actually do that? Undermining of any sort? What do you reckon? This position? Remember, the king's still in the center. This is a crucial thing. King's still in the center. Alright, now if you said, like, if you fought knight a4, no, that doesn't undermine anything. Black's actually a lot better after knight takes e4. It's a nice outpost. Black's threatened, then queen takes h4. And this is actually quite a miserable position. No, the idea was actually here, knight takes d5. Not so miserable. What can black do? Black tried c takes here. On knight takes, grab e takes, and if queen takes, this is interesting. There's d6. This is a variation, d6. And it basically favors white. We have this check. We can take another pawn. Then we have things like bishop c4, and we've got a massive threat coming, queen d5. And black's pieces are kind of dislocated with this pawn. This isn't nice for black to play. For example, knight f6. we can play d7. It's crushing, it's crushing. But anyway, so that's just a variation anyway on knight takes d5. It doesn't really help black's cause, it seems, this position. And if you might ask, instead of taking knight c takes, then knight takes g6 is pretty destructive here. And if it takes, for example, this is carnage. Yeah, this sort of thing's carnage because we've got that F file to look forward to. We're going to play, it's like mating. So yeah, so perhaps one of the better choices is actually c takes d5. So what is this about? 2 pawns for the knight. Well, now 3 pawns for the knight. So it's quite a massive pawns in the center. Quite exciting, I thought, this position. What is black doing? Let's just review for a moment. Knight takes d5. I don't think that helps because of the check. And we're on this. Yeah, this is pretty horrible. What are we going to do here? We just take on d5, hitting the rook. And yeah, white's miles better. So in fact, black played bishop g3 and the knight just went back. So it's 3 pawns for a knight. So what do you think intuitively about this position? Who do you prefer? Who to prefer? White or black? That's the question. It's 3 pawns for a knight, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All white has all the pawns, in fact. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 pawns. But white's lost the knight. Basically, black has 2 knights. Both players have the 2 bishops. Who do you prefer here? Do you prefer white or black? Actually, you know, okay, it's not so, it might, or rather, it might not be so clear-cut as I might be implying, or I might not be implying. Am I implying it's so clear-cut? It might not be entirely clear-cut right now. But one thing's for sure, black should not play knight takes d5 here because of the check, right? Because there's this like loose rook here, you know, we go back here, we can just take the loose rook. So black played castling, which might not be the best move actually. It might be, well, a4, trying to get something going, but even so, this is a tricky position. But yeah, in the game a4 wasn't played. We see black castling, and now rook g1, kicking the bishop back, goes back to b8. No, it doesn't. Sorry, pardon me. No, that's a variation. No, black played queen c7, protecting the bishop. And now we have bishop c4, and this carries quite a deadly idea. Can you instantly see, when you see the bishop here pointing at the king and the queen here, do you see an instant idea tactically? I mean, I hope some of you do. What would white be threatening if white had an extra, if white had 2 moves in a row? Imagine white had 2 moves in a row. What 2 nice moves would be? If just imagine 2 nice moves for white in a row would be. If you see this alignment, your bishop is like, yeah, potentially pinning the f7 pawn. So the 2 ideal moves here, if imagine you were allowed 2 moves, I'm just testing, if just to see the threat, I'm just testing if you could see the threat. Yeah, it's d6 to pin the pawn. Remember, the pinned piece or pawn is, the power of it is illusionary, and then it would be queen takes g6 check, yeah. So that's the threat. Now black didn't really seem to address it. The way of addressing this would be, for example, moving the king here or here. Unfortunately, bishop a6 was played, but even on king h8, this is a dodgy position, because after e4 there is a formidable pawn center here, and e5 does threaten this is a variation. It looks very, very impressive actually. I would say this pawn formation here, very impressive, and very good for white. Where does the knight go back? Say the knight goes back, we can take this because we're also dislocating here. So more than just impressive, actually winning some material back because there's two pieces that have now been attacked. Right, so no, that can't really be allowed, but apparently king h8 might be one of the better moves, believe it or not. On king g7, also g5, this is dangerous. Knight takes for d6, and yeah, it's all pretty scary. But anyway, black played, in fact, bishop a6, so we get the two dream moves we want. We get d6, which pins this pawn. Black played bishop takes d6. And then we have queen takes g6, using that pinned pawn, king h8. And here, if a queen comes to h6, you might as well nearly resign if it's like Nakamura or some attacking player. A queen visiting your king on h8, like this, usually spells you're going to get mated. Queen takes h6 check. Now, king g8 doesn't really help, by the way, because g5, and this is horrible. You know, we're just going to play like g6, like mating soon, or even taking here double check. So yeah, black played knight h7, then we have knight g5 and the classic overload. Now after knight df6, it's only that defending that, and now we finish, well, Nakamura finished with actually rook df1, simply threatening rook takes f6 to mate next move with queen takes h7, and there's no real defense here of significance, as you might think. Black resigned here at move 26. If, for example, let's imagine king g8 for a moment, takes, check. We can run it with check. We can take it here with check. We can go back with check here. And then once we've removed that defender, we can mate now. So anyway, so I thought that was a fun game. I don't know what you think. It was a bit of a carnage game, and it's actually one of my favourite variations that I like to see against the Slav defence. So it's very, very aggressive. You know, this early queen c, you play e3 as if you're going to play a very dull positional game. Then there's the queen c2, then there's the g4. But you know, it's had quite a lot of success. I've seen Magnus Carlsen play this system with white. I've seen an engine destroy another engine in one of the Engine World Championships. It's not so bad for white. There's interesting dynamic compensation, as we see from this game. But the idea of like getting a French defense in reverse with an extra tempo, this is actually thematic in the French defense. If you've ever, you know, sacrificed the knight to blow up the opponent's center, it's like that in reverse. So anyway, I hope you got something from that game, but I've got one or two more notable games to show you, actually, potentially. And actually, I don't know why so many of you are here even on YouTube, as I didn't publicize this event. So thank you for coming on YouTube, and you know, I'll try and keep going for a little bit, because actually I don't think Nakamura, not Nakamura, I don't think the Tradewise Gibraltar Festival has been covered that much on YouTube so far. I've actually been to the tournaments one year and I really enjoyed it. I actually got to play Nakamura in the Caleta Hotel. I stayed at Caleta Hotel. I played them in the bar area. It's a really fantastic atmosphere, and I saw Boris Spassky as well. He was a guest of honor. It was a fantastic year to go. I really quite enjoyed it, although my chess wasn't too brilliant. Okay, but anyway, let's go on to another notable game from the event. Let's stick with Nakamura for a bit. I also noticed Nakamura in another round play a Dutch defense guru who's written a book, I believe, on the Dutch defense, Robert Bellin. Now, Robert Bellin, let's just do a quick bio check on ChessGames.com. Okay, 63 years old. Okay, now he was born in Great Yarmouth, England, awarded the IM title in 1977. He was British champion in 1979 on tiebreak. He is married to Joanna Malpetrov's husband, Miles Bellin. Okay, so Bellin, but I think he is a Dutch defense expert. Okay, so let's see what happens. We're guaranteed a fun opening. So Nakamura with white plays d4, and after f5, I would say a lot of the more interesting games to comment are in really dodgy opening systems, or ones which create weaknesses quite often. You get fantastically spectacular attacks. Even when player with white is a dull positional player, they often you get to see their sacrificial side. But here against Nakamura to play the Dutch defense, that's really like asking for trouble. Yeah, because weaknesses feed dynamic, aggressive players. They encourage them to find fantastic combinations even more, I would say. So anyway, but Nakamura plays a very, very positional system. He doesn't play the Staunton gambit or anything. No, he plays g3. And I want you to note about the center, white is trying to influence key central squares like c5 and e5 quite a lot in this game. So have a look at c5 and e5 throughout the course of the opening. e6, black is weakening some of the dark squares, so I think there's an extra emphasis than usual on the dark squares in the center. Okay, so we get this classic stone wall, but here actually it surprised me, not so classic I thought, after queen c2, because I thought c6 is the classic stone wall. So you've got this triangle plus an extra bit of accessory on the f5. Now c6, there's at least 80 games in live book, but actually knight c6 was played here, and I thought this was a bit odd because it blocks the c pawn. Doesn't black want to stabilize and reinforce the d5 points quite a bit? But it has been played a few times before, 14 apparently, compared to 80 for c6. So it's not as if it's never been played before. And black might be sometimes threatening knight b3 here. Knight b4, I mean, pardon me, knight b4. Now, is it worth white even parrying that with a3? Well, probably. Nakamura parried it, which means he must have taken it seriously, I guess. If he plays knight c3, then okay, maybe it's slightly annoying. This position is slightly annoying. D takes c4, because then actually black's also now threatening knight takes d4. And if we play this, then it's looking a bit strange, the whole position. Yeah, so anyway, so actually, yeah, we see a3, and black plays a5, knight bd2, knight e4. Now e3, stabilizing that d4 pawn, king h8, and here the black king is actually on a dark square, right? I mentioned, look at these dark squares in the center. White's plan now does seem to get an iron grip on them, so b3 makes sense, not just pointing at the king, but also increasing that bind on the e5 square. Bishop d7, bishop b2. So white's play, it's very simple but actually quite effective. You don't really need to do much against this sort of opening, except make sure you've got a good bind on the central squares. Okay, you can expect to be like attacked, I guess, but here we see bishop e8, rook ac1, bishop g6. This looks a little bit uncomfortable. We see knight e1, it's tolerated, the queen's not running away from the bishop on g6, and in fact black dare not play anything like f4 anyway. White can just snap off on e4. Knight takes e4 looks a bit more natural as well. So actually the bishop just scurried back to f7 here, believe it or not, scurried back to f7, which is curious actually, coming to think about it. Let's see for a moment. If the bishop didn't go back, c takes knight d3, the bishop might actually be a target to knight f4. So maybe it just didn't want to be there in this position in advance. It just didn't want to be there. So it goes to f7, knight d3, and you see, look, white's really getting this grip on c5 and e5 now. Literally, there's a huge grip on the central dark squares, which help fix down black's opportunities. We see a4, b4, bishop d6. Now we see c takes d5, e takes, and both knights are ganging up on that central e5 square. So we've got 3 pieces looking at e5 just positionally. Iron grip, queen e8. When I say iron grip, you can conjure up images of Petrosian's games where he often had this seemingly an iron grip on positions, more so I think than his contemporaries. It was definitely evident there was this iron grip of logic. And yeah, he did play the Stonewall himself with black, funny enough, Botvinnik as well. But here it seems as though white has this iron grip on the position, both c5 and e5. Would you agree? It's evident that Nakamura is playing super solidly, gripping the dark squares at the moment. And in fact now knight fe5 is played, and white is threatening now to win a pawn with knight takes c6. So the knight humbly steps back away from that. c7 is protected. Now knight c5, yeah, these knights are a bit of a nuisance. What's now being threatened here? Potentially, it seems, knight cd7 could be on the cards. We could just quickly investigate that. Well, here loses the exchange, doesn't it? Or no, black would have to give up the bishop. That's unpleasant. But anyway, black maybe didn't like this idea. Let's try another move. That would lose the exchange, or not. Would just lose the bishop. Black just takes on e5, but we don't want to lose the bishop. But black actually volunteered the bishop here. Anyway, bishop takes e5, d takes. Now we have knight takes c5, and interestingly, you might think queen takes c5 looks intuitively what you might play, and the engine likes that as well. But this is also good. B takes c5. So this pawn is now attacked. We're not taking there. We're still attacking this pawn. And here it's actually might be tricky to defend this position. Actually, might be a little bit tricky. For example, bishop e6. We might have this. And it starts to look a little bit dangerous for black. Black does seem to be in a bind, but anyway, it's strange. You know, maybe black should have just protected the pawn like this. This is another idea, just to protect the pawn. But yeah, this kind of position it is nice for white. White's got a nice grip on the position, but nothing is dropping off immediately. I guess that's the bright side of it, but it's fairly uninspiring actually. I would say for black to have this position, because it's kind of a bad bishop. White's got the nice bishop pair looking at the center, and okay, so black actually played an adventurous move here. Queen b5, queen b5. And we have now rook fd1, and it seems as though black can just make that solid with c6. But the queen is a bit of a target here. Bishop f1, kicking the queen, goes to a5, and kicks again now, bishop c3. Perhaps the queen should scurry back to c7 here and lose f5. This might be one of the better moves. If black loses f5, then black at least has a blockade, although being pawned down. It's double pawns here. If black especially was playing against someone of equal rating or whatever, I mean, there might be some compensation. It's not immediately losing, but unfortunately black played into a naughty tactical idea. Queen takes c5 was played. Now, you might be on tactical high alert here from earlier, because the bishop is on the same diagonal as the king, right? that's a clue if you want to know where to look for resources in this position to exploit that fact. That's uncomfortable, but also that you might think this is slightly uncomfortable as well. This X-ray attack here, we've got 2 X-rays here, and there's a tactic which exploits these things quite well. Can you see what Nakamura played in this position? What White's play here? Oh, sorry. Please no naughty business on stream. So there's a tactical idea exploiting the X-rays. So we've got 2 X-rays, X-ray attacks, as elements to assess. But if we were trying to find resources now to try and exploit that, what would you play here? Okay, E6, right? But the thing is, it's important to find the follow-up, because black plays now knight takes E6, seemingly protecting the queen, right? So has black set the trap for white? Has he? Because if we play bishop takes G7, king takes, yeah, what do we want to do here? Because queen takes, black will be better off. But unfortunately, there's something about this sequence of events which doesn't have to occur. The first bit can occur, bishop takes G7. Can you visualize? Let's do a visualization test. How can we improve that variation of bishop takes G7? So bishop takes G7, if I ask you the question, king takes G7, what does white have? This is a sneaky little move. Yeah, sneakiness, sneaky little trick. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to show you. We do in fact still have this X-ray, right? But can you see in this position? Yeah, we don't have to take. We can play this sneaky little check. And yeah, we're winning the queen. The game carried on for a bit, but white's essentially won some material here. Won the queen, basically. And the game continued like this. I don't think black had too many mating opportunities after. In fact, here black resigned at move 39. So, what do we get from this game? Well, the prelude to the tactic was a good demonstration of gripping, you know, the dark squares, playing very solidly, gripping the dark squares. The X-rays were expertly exploited with the tactical E6. So Nakamura pounced on that, found that, and won the queen. Maybe there's something to remember for one's own games there. I hope you got something from that as well. So, okay, so let's have a look at another game of interest. Now this one, Nakamura is playing black in the Nimzo Indian defense against Tamas Fodor. I'll just try and get the pronunciation on that. Hold on a sec. If there is one. Okay, who is Tamas Fodor? He's a 24-year-old Hungarian. Tamas Fodor JR, as in J.R. Ewing. Grandmaster in 2012. Won a double GM norm during the double GM norm. I've never heard of that before. During the 13th European Individual Championship 2012, where he scored 6 out of 11, and followed with another norm at the Casa GM event in September 2012, gaining his GM title on 23rd of September 2012 at the age of 21 years, 3 months and 21 days. Okay, and he's the son of Tamas Fodor. Okay, right. So anyway, d4 from Tamas Fodor. This is in round 2, I think, on the 27th of January 2016. Nakamura plays the Nimzo Indian defense. So we get into a Nimzo Indian defense. Queen c2. We have c5. D takes c5 is all the rage in this position. That's the main move. Black castled, knight f3. Knight a6, this is the main move. This is like mainline stuff here. Knight goes with tempo against the queen, queen d4. This is again the main move actually. You might think queen c2. That's not as popular. It seems as queen d4. d6. Yeah, that's the main move. And then white played it seems that one of the main things to do is knight g5 in this position. But white played bishop g5. Which is interesting. Nakamura took on g5 and here played a5. And there is a concern here, I believe, in this position for playing things like a takes and e5. This is a bit dangerous. If this pawn is left on b4 here, this is a dangerous scenario. Just to demonstrate that, white actually played b5, but imagine white plays e3, e5. Queen steps back, protecting the rook. e4 actually embarrasses the knight a bit. Actually, it stops the knight going there, and black ends up being better actually because of the knight. That seems to be the principal problem about the position. This is maybe good for black, not that queen c8 or queen c7. Anyway, we see b5, h6, the knight goes back, e5, queen drops back here, and this is kind of interesting. e4, knight d4. Now black to play in this position. What would you play with black? This is an interesting decision here. Black to play here, a dynamic, aggressive move needed in this position to disrupt white. What would you play in this position if you were playing black? Any ideas? Black to play, dynamic, aggressive. Anything springs to mind? Yeah, it's also the top engine move by chance. e3, it dislocates white's resources. It's creating a wedge. It's not taken actually. If it is taken, knight g4 is actually quite dangerous. And there's things like queen f6 threatening queen f2, as well as knight takes e3. So say queen d2, we have queen f6, and then also we've got a problem on a1, so we can't move the knight because we're going to drop a1. Yeah. So this is a big problem position for white. If white has to castle queenside, then white either faces knight f2, winning material, or even rook e8 is actually apparently quite good with that in reserve. For example, like this. This is just horrible. This is just really horrible. In fact, white's king is also exposed if the knight ever moves back. For example, like this. This is just like disaster area, the whole thing. So yeah, no, it's a bad idea to take the pawn on e3 in a nutshell. White played f3. So we have this dislocating pawn, and this would seem to be a dream position for a Nimzo Indian player to have. in this line. I don't know if you would agree, but it seems as though Nakamura's opening has been a huge success here against his Grandmaster opponent already at move 17. Would you agree? Black much better, yeah? If I give you 20 seconds to just agree or not. Or is this pawn a liability? You might have a dynamic view on this. You might think this pawn's a liability or something. Without the bishop though, it's going to take a while to crawl out of here, isn't it? Anyway, okay. Of course black's better, yeah. as said on stream. So bishop d7 was played. We have g3 trying to do something to the bishop. Rook c8, but the c-pawn is in need of maintenance. Rook c1, and then we have queen b6. Doesn't seem like there's an immediate threat, except black can comfortably double the rooks here to put pressure on c4. White plays queen c3, and we have actually an attack though. Queen takes e3 on this pawn. It's protected. Bishop g2. Now queen c5, extra pressure on this pinned pawn, so d5 is coming in here, and in fact after castling d5 is played, so a lot of pressure on this poor c-pawn. Knight b3, white drops a pawn here, because knight b3 drops this a3 pawn in the game. If white plays something like this, I think black is better, but there's nothing immediately totally crushing except losing this c-pawn. So that would be a shame. Black would be apparently black's better here. Black is a pawn up, right, for the moment. But yeah, we see knight b3, which loses this a pawn immediately. So what's white idea? Well, white taking on a5, getting the queens off now. Queen takes, rook takes. We have b6, and we've still got a problem here with the c-pawn. If the knight had gone, instead of there threatening knight d6, if the knight had gone back, then we could just take the c-pawn, right? Or even take this one. Both are good. But the knight ventures to b7, as though knight d6 is on the cards. Nakamura just not too worried about that. It just takes on c4. That sorts that out anyway. Rook takes, d takes, rook c1. We have rook c8. Knight d6, as though white's going to get a pawn back. Or is he? Rook c5. Yeah, hitting b5 now. It's like the pawn chain has been blown up. This mini pawn chain has been blown up. Black's going to end up winning material, whatever happens. If rook takes c4, rook c3 was played. If rook takes c4, actually there's even better here than rook takes c4. Can you see? What would you play here with black? Oh, I've given a clue already. Whoops. Black to play in this. This is just a variation, by the way. Here in the game, rook c3 was played in this position, trying to get this pawn. But say rook takes c4 was played. What could you play tactically in this position? If I give you 20 seconds here, black to play. This is just a variation. Didn't happen. Black to play here. Yeah, remember this pawn is actually, I could try and say this even in my live commentary games, if you've got one of the exit squares covered for the opponent's king, you know, start looking for mating nets. You know, this exit square is covered, right? Actually, rook d5 is absolutely immediately winning, attacking the knight and threatening now a mate, because that exit square is covered. When you've got even one pawn or piece covering an exit square, you've woven a subset of a mating net, so you know, look for the rest of it. So here rook d1 check is actually like mating, so that actually wins a piece in this position. So anyway, white didn't fall for that. Yeah, rook c3 was played, trying to get rid of that naughty pawn. So we have rook d5 anyway now, threatening. Sorry, it's not as simple as that. There's bishop h3. Let me just reiterate that. Pardon me. If the knight moves, we have the check, and then we have bishop h3. And this is mating because the knight cannot defend f1. There's no d2 access. The check doesn't help. This is helpless for white. It's this position. Pardon me. Just to clarify that can't be allowed. Okay. Now that's sorted out. Rook c3, attacking that pawn. We have rook d5 anyway, so the threat is again check, bishop f1, bishop h3. We have white now playing knight takes c4 though, which changes the picture a bit, doesn't it? Because now, imagine the check, bishop here, imagine this. Hasn't white, if we visualize this, got knight takes e3, defending f1 and hitting the rook? Let's have a quick look at that. Black actually might not have played rook d1 check here. This is advanced tactics. Well, you need to see this. White's idea is to hit e3 here. I'll just show you. Check. Now bishop f1 is actually not good. Knight takes e3. It turns out in this position though, black's still okay with knight d5. This is good for white anyway. But no, there's an even stronger move in this position now than the check. This is, I know, it's weird, isn't it? Black is switching between this back row disaster and something else based on the exact move that white has done, the exact weakness of the last move that white has now done. Black to play. Let's try and remove the arrows to answer this question without the arrows for a moment. So white has played knight takes c4, ganging up on e3. Is that so tragic? Black to play here. 20 seconds. Tactics, training a little bit. This is the top engine move, by the way. I'm asking you to find in this position. What can black do in this position? I hope you're all getting it soon. I mean, on the 20-second delay. Yeah, in this particular position with the knight coming into the foray, is that the right word? Actually, I'm not sure I've ever used that in a sentence before. Foray. I'm gonna have to check that out. I hope that can be used in this context. That the knight can actually be pinned. That naughty knight can be pinned now. So bishop takes b5 is now on the cards to exploit the pin. And in fact, white, because of this pawn, it doesn't seem as though white can do much, but what he does try and do is allow the knight to try and protect the rook. But unfortunately now the rook is nudged away from that light square with bishop f5. Yeah, if we play bishop takes, that's not so good because knight takes protects the rook, right? But no, the rook is nudged away gently from c2, and here white resigned. So Nakamura's tactics crushing people, it seems. When he has a good position, the tactics become crushing in Nakamura's hands. Even when he has black pieces, it doesn't matter. He had the tactical pressure. Something seemed to go wrong in the opening to allow that e3, though. I don't really want to go too deep about the opening, but I just I think if you're a Nimza Indian player, perhaps investigate that opening, because something seems to go wrong for white. So anyway, did anyone get anything from that game? If you did, I mean, I could carry on. There's another 3 interesting games I looked at from one of the other more interesting players of the tournament. If you want, I can carry on. Should I carry on? More games? I don't mind. I have gone over another 3 interesting games for my own interest, independent of doing any streaming. I've got to increase my weaponry of ideas, you see, for my online chess, if nothing else, or over the board. So, yeah, okay. So Maxim Vachon MVL is also in the event. Maxim, let's just get his name. Hold on a sec. Or MVL for short. He's had a few interesting games, and he's in the lead in the tournament at the moment with 6.5 out of 8. Okay, which one first? There's a real battle with the top women players in the world, by the way, against the top male grandmasters. I think it's one of those events, Tradewise Gibraltar, that does attract, I think, a higher than usual percentage of the top female grandmasters in the world. It's just a very, very nice location and holiday place in its own right, Gibraltar. And I think so here we see another clash of one of the top women players in the world, Maxim Vachier Legrave. Let's see how he's pronounced. Is playing against Valentina Gunina. All right, let me get the pronunciations. Okay, I'm just going to play them if I can. No, I can't for that one. Anyway, he's MVL and he's playing against. I've got one for this.
Valentina Gunina.
Did you hear that?
Valentina Gunina.
Who's a 26-year-old Russian.
Valentina Gunina.
Was born in Murmansk. Her father was her first coach and taught her to play. She was Russian champion in the girls under 10, under 14, under 16, under 18 and under 20 national competitions, and also won the under 12 European Youth Championship in 2000s. Actually, I don't want to carry on reading the bio too much. The latest achievements, she picked up her second GM norm when she scored 7 out of 10 in the Gibraltar tournament of 2013. She got a second GM in 2013 Gibraltar. In October 2013, she also repeated her feat of 2011 and won the Russian Super Finals Women's Championship 2013 outright. She also won the Russian Super Finals Women 2014. Okay, so one of the top women players in the world, yeah. 2496. But Maxim MVL is 2785, slightly outrates her to be honest. Knight F3 was played by MVL. Let's flip the board. We see D5 and we see G3. He's playing like a non-committally, just the fianchetto system. After castles, E6, H3 kicks the bishop, and I think there's more justification if black's got the pawns on the light squares. This idea of getting the grip on the dark squares, particularly C5 and E5, I think there might be more justification in this particular structure, not to treat it like a reverse King's Indian attack, which you might do. But actually, I think that positionally, that it would seem overall for me, I don't know about for you, to play D4 here, because it marks, a grip on these key dark squares in this position. That's what he played. Who can argue with a 2785 GM? Yeah, that seems to be a good positional move in this position instead of D3. So we see Knight D7, C4, Bishop E7. And in fact now white dissolves a bit of black's pawn centre by playing c takes d5, and now knight c3. We see knight gf6, and in fact by playing c takes he's actually weakens the f5 square, and in fact here knight h4 is played, wanting to put a knight on f5. So already there's this uncomfortable feeling about this position for black, because is this entirely easy to parry? You might think, well, it's one of the engine choices to play bishop g6. Yeah, white could take. I don't think white necessarily wants to play f4. Yeah, maybe white just takes on g6. But anyway, black just ignored that for the moment, played castling, just castling. And we do have this idea of f4 now, as if the bishop's going to be trapped with g4 and f5. We have knight e4, which threatens knight takes g3, among other things. And also this is behind the scenes as well. But this g3 pawn is protected, and that is parried in one move, protecting g3, getting out of the way of bishop takes h4. Now we have knight takes c3, b takes c3, and here white is threatening to win the bishop again. If white has two moves, white will play g4, will take on e7 check, and then play f5 trapping the bishop. So this next move addresses that, gives the bishop an escape exit, but does weaken this diagonal. White pounces on that fact with queen b3, also hitting the pawn. Black protects the pawn, but now e4 puts more pressure on the diagonal. Rook e8. We have g4, bishop goes back. Black is threatening d takes e4, hitting the queen. We have knight takes e7 check, and now e5. So visually, I think, in my biased opinion, it looks impressive. This center, this looks impressive visually. The engine thinks it's about equal actually. Knight c4. At the moment, engine evaluation is about equal. I don't know what you guys think. Do you think this is at move 19? White or black or equal? What do you think? Don't let me bias you. Do you think white's better here or black's better, or do you think it's about equal? It might be slightly better for, actually the engine likes, I know it's only Fritz 13 though I'm asking. I didn't want to ask any other engine just in case it seizes up the machine. I wanted to stick with a relatively simple one. But yeah, okay. Queen c2 was played. Okay, so we have f takes e5, d takes e5. We have rook ad8. That's fairly solid in some respects. Queen f2. Yes, attacking a pawn, it seems. That's addressed with c5, which kind of weakens d5 a little bit. Nothing too fatal. Rook e1. Queen c7. To be fair, this looks like quite a nice knight. This bishop seems a bit restricted. White plays now f5. He's opening up this seemingly restricted bishop. It gives it the f4 square, but black can take this pawn, it seems. You know, rook takes e5. It's safe to take this pawn. There's no major disaster here because, well, this happens. Rook takes e1 is check. Now, here, the computer move would seem crazy, a crazy thing to do. I think we don't like pinning our own pieces, but it seems as though knight d6 might be necessary. Yeah, if queen d7, then this is nice for white. Queen takes c5. There's rook e7 then threatens, but maybe knight d6 is technically the best move. Anyway, that wasn't played. Queen a5 was played, which does abandon a bit the e7 square that could have been used, but actually white first protects this one with queen g3, threatening also bishop c7, forking queen and rook. And this queen is going out to Alaska, it seems, out to the North Pole now, with queen takes a2. So it's not only abandoned e7, but its influence is a bit limited from a2. Yes, there's this passed pawn, but that's quite a long way off. Bishop g5, hitting the rook. This might not have been... Okay, let's not have any judgment on that for a moment. Rook c8. The thing is about this queen over here, white now is playing f6. This is dangerous. And it would be even more dangerous if this was chess crazy house to have f6, because then you could put pieces on e7 and g7. That would be really dangerous if this was crazy house. But no, it's normal chess, but it's still dangerous even in normal chess here, f6, with the queen on a2. Okay, so black actually played g takes f6, bishop takes f6, and yeah, this bishop striking across these dark squares is scary stuff, very scary stuff. We have queen d2 at least trying to get back to the dark squares. g5. Yeah, black is material up, but white has nasty ideas here like rook e7 and g6 coming up, which work well together in fact. Knight d6, and in fact g6 is used here to open up some lines, and you might wonder why exactly. The first point to note is, I believe, the h file. Without this h pawn, this h file is more dangerous for h8. So for example, h takes, there's queen h4. It's looking pretty terminal there. Black would have to give up the queen to stave off mate. So that's the point there. Bishop takes g6 was played, which weakens d5. The queen can't take here because the queen takes his check, but the queen can go now to e5, threatening now bishop takes d5 check, and this is a nasty crossfire on these two diagonals. What can black do in this position? Black tried rook f8 here. If bishop f7, okay, now this is an interesting position. Why isn't bishop f7 tried? For example, the check, we can take that, that's not a problem. But white does have quite a crushing move in this particular position. This is a variation in the game. Black played rook f8, right? Now, okay, so I'll give you it as a tactical test. White's play here is a variation which didn't surface in the game. White's play here. What would you play with white? I'll give you 20 seconds. Actually, there are a few tempting ideas. I'm going to have to admit. There's quite a few tempting ideas. Okay, in fact, it seems some of you have mentioned bishop h8, which looks really quite logical, because you are threatening queen g7 mate, right? Black can actually play defensive queen h6 and stand okay here. More than okay. Black's actually threatening now rook e8. It's nasty. And if bishop takes d5, takes, yeah, black's just one material, and also you've had it. So queen h6 actually refutes bishop h8. Yeah, that's naughty, isn't it? So forget bishop h8. Rook e3 was mentioned. Yeah, it looks terminal to play rook g3 check, but black has knight e4 apparently, holding the g3 square. And if queen also holds the g5 square, there's no queen g5. And if here, I can take this, and it's like a draw. No, but actually it turns out in this position, which didn't happen, that on bishop f7, it turns out, give yourself 500 points, rook e2 is crushing actually. Rook e2, it's a forcing move against the queen. And you might think, well, doesn't this allow the check? The thing is, the check, we got bishop f1, we got rook g2 coming up. And that's pretty disastrous. This is a disaster for black. Yeah, if it's something like here, then queen e6, g4 check. Alright, so rook e2 is the thing that finishes off black in this line. And if here, then bishop f1 threatens rook g2 check. And again, it's the disaster of rook e8 check, and take the queen, and we just won loads of material, won the rook. So yeah, rook e2 is actually crushing here. Anyway, black tried rook f8 instead of bishop f7, so letting d5 go. Bishop takes d5 check, knight f7. Now this knight's pinned, and you might think, hold on a sec, does this tactic still not work? Correct, queen h6 does hold for black, but white played an even stronger move in this position than bishop h8, and this is the final move of the game actually at move 34. White to play an even stronger move than bishop h8. What's really crushing here? It's actually in the same vein as rook e2, by the way. That's the clue. I don't want to say any more. White to play in this position. What would you play here? The last move of the game. Oh, some of you have mentioned queen e8. Let's see. No, I don't think so. Let's check. Black would have queen takes d5 here. Winning. No, bishop g5. It hits the queen. It stops this pesky queen h6 defense. So when the queen moves now, then we play bishop h6, and we're mating on g7 finally. the idea of mating on g7 happens. Yeah. So bishop g5, end of game. Any other suggestions? Do you want to finish the game off in some other way? Bishop e7 is also strong, apparently. Not as strong as bishop g5. If here, queen h8 check. Oh, this is a cute one. Blimey. For bishop f6. We'll take e8 checkmate. Yeah, that's a cute one. Bishop e7 apparently is quite strong as well. Okay, give yourself a few points for that. Wow, that's a cute one, isn't it? Rook e8, queen h8. Isn't that neat? So black would have to like lose the exchange. But no, bishop g5 is even stronger. If anywhere the rook moves, we still have. What do we have here? Now we have bishop g5 again. Anyway, we still want to play this idea to get like that. Hit the queen. Okay, on to another game. So what do we get from that game? You know what? I'll just think that as humans, you don't want your queen too far away from your king. Things are, you know, you're just asking for a little bit of trouble. It's like taking a risk, isn't it? And yeah, again, someone like MVL, he's so resourceful. If he's got the option to put a rook on your 7th rank and the option to play a line opening move like g6, you're probably in big trouble for king safety. Let's be honest about that. The queen was far away. It was resourcefully trying to defend, but its very defensive resource queen h6 was squashed in the end with bishop g5, using the queen as a tempo gainer for mating on g7. So the queen had run around the place. So let's have a look at another MVL game. Okay, I'm not entirely sure actually about the one I did play for it. I'm not entirely sure about it. Okay, let's look at it anyway. It was one of the shorter ones. It's shorter, sweeter in some way. So against no, not that one. Pardon me. Not against Marcus Rager. Pardon me. That was a wrong one. Against the Atari, Atari. I used to have an Atari 100. Yeah, that's how I started with game consoles. Atari 100 back in the day. No, his name is Aryan Tari, not Atari, by the way. Aryan Tari. So Aryan Tari playing white. Is only 16 years old, Norway. Yeah, 16 years old. Blimey. He's Norwegian junior champion in 2012. IM in 2013. GM last year in 2015. Norwegian champion 2015, last year. Tari is Norway's #1 junior and Norway's top 10 of all players for the January 2016 list. Okay, have any of you heard of him before? Let's have a look. So MVL was playing black against Aryan Tari. So d4, we see knight f6, c4, g6. We go into a Grunfeld defense. Knight f3, bishop g7, the Grunfeld. Now this is a cute little move. I have seen this idea before. White wants to avoid the structural issues that might result and plays this move knight a4. It's amusing. It has been played before. Yeah, it's an amusing little move. It's been played at least 80 times before in live book. The main move is e4, but if you want a cute little surprise move, knight a4. So the idea is just to play e4 without allowing knight takes c3. So there's this shock MVR. Is he totally out of territory? Does it matter? Well, he stops e4 here by playing bishop f5. And yeah, a knight on the rim is dim, they say. So what do you think about two knights on the rim in the opening? You might think, hold on a sec. Really? This player's a grandmaster? Actually, my good friend Alex took the piss out of me for playing knight a4 in a bad way against an IM not once. He really took the piss hard about his coach refusing to coach me after seeing this game I played knight a4. And here we have a game with not only knight a4 and knight h4. I mean, it looks crazy, doesn't it? But there's a logic to it that White wanted to play e4. Yeah? Is this crazy or what? Is it just my imagination, this line? I don't know if it's going to be repeated ever. What do you think about this? Should White be playing like this? We have an unusual position. The bishop just drops back to d7. Yeah, okay. So White gets the idea of playing e4 now. e4. See, we've avoided knight takes c3. Now, if only the knight would go back to justify White's concept. Yeah? If only. Say knight b6. If knight b6, White would actually be slightly better here according to the engine, with knight c5, justifying totally the two knights on the rim. Threatening even knight takes b7. And if bishop c8, the other knight would re-centralize as if nothing had happened, and White would be slightly better. Actually, more than half a pawn better. Yeah, it's theoretical. it's just unusual though. Anyway, Black actually played instead of knight b6. Now we're out of live book. I've got to say this is coming out of live book as far as I can see from the ChessBase live book perspective. Black played e5. Yeah, he's hitting actually the knight here. Funny enough. So he's not too worried about his own knight here. This knight goes back. If White does take here, this is okay for Black. There's pressure across, and on the other knight, well, there's pressure across the centre. If takes, yeah, we are actually taking that knight here. If D takes, we take that knight there. Yeah, that's going. Yeah. No, White didn't want to do that. White played the knight back. And you might think, hold on a sec, he's moving knight b6 now, surely he's going to play knight b6 in this position, alright? Knight b6. Again, knight c5 would be a pain. No, actually Black comes up with another move. Black, MVR played queen e7. This is curious. And White actually played knight takes e5. If takes here, then e takes d4 check is check. This position, so let's say White castles here, then we have bishop takes a4, getting the piece back with advantage to Black. Yeah, it's all pretty complicated. But anyway, White didn't do that. White didn't play e takes d5. There might be better here for bishop g5 actually, and it gets complicated. This is interesting as well. Might be okay for White. Anyway, after queen e7, knight takes e5 was played, which might be a mistake. Maybe White should have actually done this according to the engines. Should have actually gone into that line, but he played knight takes e5, and then we have this check knight c3, knight takes c3, white uses the pin now, temporarily sacking a piece to get the piece back, knight takes a2, rook takes. Now here, actually, what white's doing quite well here in this position, apparently. Bishop e6, the rook moves, black castles. Bishop c3, yeah, white's actually done well out of the opening, it seems, believe it or not. Rook e8, yeah. Bishop b5 was played now. c6. Bishop drops back. Yeah, bishop drops back. Rook d8. And black is threatening to win a piece here. Bishop takes e5 and rook takes d3 is on the cards. So white parries that with king e2, protecting the bishop against bishop takes e5. Knight d7. White took. Rook takes d7. White's under fire though on d4 here. e5 for the moment. Bishop d5. That pawn's protected. And we have undermining in the center, f6. c5, striking at the center from the side. White took on c5 here. Maybe best would have been apparently to take on f6 first. White might actually be okay still. White's okay apparently. But no, he took on c5. This might be the first inaccuracy, major inaccuracy. Because after f takes, yeah, that king is still in the center here. And here black pounces with that king on e2. Can you see what black played in this position to get a small tiny advantage now? So if I give you a little tactical test, black to play here. What does black play? Clue, the king's on e2. What would you play with black? Any ideas? Yeah, blow up the center, the king on e2. Bishop takes e5, yeah? Yeah. It's unfortunate, isn't it? Yeah. But that's what you expect with the king there. This didn't happen, but that'll be unpleasant. White tried to minimize the damage. Bishop b5. Probably make things worse actually. Rook e7. This is now in black's favor, this position. Yeah, it's pleasant that the center's been blown up, the king's exposed, and the king's getting checked. Rook b3 hitting the pawn. Rook b4. Threatening bishop a2 check here to win the bishop, in fact. b3. We have a5. This bishop's kind of stranded. Black is threatening now check and taking the bishop because he's just supported the rook. If he had done immediately bishop takes, then there's king c3 hitting the rook, yeah? So that's why he's just supported the rook to threaten bishop takes b3 check. We have the king going to c3, protecting b3. Rook c8 though. White's in big trouble now in this position. King b2, rook takes c5, threatening to trap the bishop with b5 now. Here, black is winning. Rook takes b5, trapping the bishop. White tries this counter, rook c5. But here, there's a crushing move, which I'm not going to test you on. It's just bishop c4. It leaves the bishop trapped. White resigned here. If king c2, Then we don't take here, but rather we've got b5 card. We play bishop f1 or bishop e2, and this is just winning this bishop. Yeah, bishop c4 is like winning the bishop tactically. So here we play bishop f1 or bishop e2. Yeah, so bishop c4 was the last move, I think, of this game. On move 37. So white resigns. If here, for example, same thing, bishop f1, we're trapping that bishop. That was a bit of a tactical Grunfeld clash. What do we get from that game? Well, I think it's always scary to play against Grunfeld. White tried to be innovative with the knight moves and actually did get a good position. I think the critical thing was to consider actually earlier, I think it was knight takes d5. This stuff is important to get right in the opening. Was it move 10 instead of knight takes e5? E takes d5 was mentioned. But anyway, yeah, white's king was stuck in the center with his center blown up. That's not what you want to happen when you play against the Grunfeld. Okay, one last game, if you want, which I might have checked out. Have I? Not really, no. Hang on. Did someone say there was another Nakamura game I haven't mentioned, which was fun? Let me just check. I think I've mentioned most of the fun games. Hang on. There was a brutal game which I haven't mentioned. Do you want to see it? I don't know. There is a brutal game which I have seen recently from this tournament, which I don't know if you want to have a look at. In my opinion, it was fairly. It was a bit of a shock. I'll show you that in the last game, okay? Yeah. This is a bit of a shocking game. Right, Vichy Anand's actually playing in Gibraltar. And this is in round 5. He's actually playing in Gibraltar. Yes, this was against Adrian Demuth. Adrian Demuth is quite high rated actually. He's not a complete bunny. He's a grandmaster. 24-year-old French grandmaster. Adrian Demuth. Let's have a look at this game then. Last FIDE rating 2537. He's not a complete bunny. Okay, so let's have a look. Vichy Anand was white. E4, E5. We'll take black's perspective, shall we, or not? Yeah, knight F3, knight C6, bishop E5. So Adrian Demuth is playing black A6, and he plays this D6 move here, which is the third Steinitz system. We're coming into the third Steinitz system. Bishop G4. Steinitz was a world champion. We have H3. H5 is the main move. White plays bishop takes C6. B takes D3. And now white might potentially be threatening to take this bishop. So we have bishop takes F3, queen takes, queen F6, queen D1, and here is where things get crazy, right? Things get absolutely strange. Black to play, so you're playing Vichy Anand, right? And this isn't a bullet game. So black to play here. What moves would you consider if you wanted to be super aggressive? Black to play. So your opponent is Vichy Anand. You're playing black. What would you play in this position? It's kind of you know, justified, I suppose, by the position, the closed nature of it. We're kind of out of live book territory, actually. I can't find this position in live book territory. Something odd about this position already. Okay, G5 is played. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. G5. But how does white actually refute this? You know, if black's charging to his king, you know, how does white actually refute this? Knight C3 was played. Knight E7. We have G3. So white is ready to keep things closed, yeah. If H4, then I guess, no, we've got Queen G4 on H4. And if G4, I think we can play H4. And white's better in both cases. Black doesn't need to push any of these pawns. Bishop G7. We have King H2. Queen G6. Now F4. Vichy strikes that F file a light. F4. This might not be technically the right way to try and expose black, because the black king hasn't yet castled either side, and black actually, the bishop's kind of activated a bit after E takes F4. Clearly the bishop's got a diagonal here, right? And now black played G4 here, F5, and the bishop now plays this check. Bishop F4, Queen F6. Yeah, and actually, who do you think's better here, white or black? If I ask you that question here, white or black, who do you prefer in this position? I have been analysing some of my 5-minute hack attacks where they go wrong, by the way, on 5-minute time controls, when you go directly for the king or otherwise, and often when you use pieces for an attack, you're neglecting other aspects of the position. You can sometimes just lose on a backward pawn later or something like that. But here black's pieces are not totally committed right out of the way yet, are they? Do you think white's better or black? Yeah, well, the engine likes black here. Fritz, for whatever it's worth. Fritz 13 likes black. So Queen D2. We have Rook B8. Here. Rook G8. Yeah, the king is refusing to castle. It's just staying put in the centre. How outrageous. Bishop takes E5. Queen takes E5. Check. Queen F4. The queen now goes to C5. We have Rook G1. Now finally the king moves actually to D7, connecting the rooks. The rooks are finally connected, which means also that if white tries to win the G4 pawn here, there's going to be a penalty, right? Rook takes G4 is actually mating, because this other rook's going to come around the H file, yeah? So it does address that immediate issue of the G pawn by playing King D7. We have H4. Now black played G3 check. We have Rook takes G3. Rook takes, King takes, check. And this is dangerous now. Rook G4, this tempo gain, Rook G4, Queen F3. Queen D4 is played now, which threatens to bounce off F6 to hit H4. So white needs to try and do something about that. Or does he? He played actually Rook F1. It might not be such a big deal actually. queen f6 in this position because queen f2 protects h4. You might think, hold on, was rook f1 even needed? Let's just check this. This position, I'm just giving you a3 as an idea. No, this position doesn't work. Okay, so now I know why rook f1 was needed. Do you know what black can play in this position? This didn't happen. Okay, tactical test. Black to play here. And this, I think, explains why rook f1 was important. Black has a crushing move in this position. Can you see? This is a variation, by the way. But can you see what black can play in this variation? Which is crushing. Adrian Demuth is black. Yeah, black has knight g6 here. It's murderous. Yeah. If say knight e2, then we're taking here and we're crashing through with a big attack. Yeah. For example. So yeah, rook f1 was a good safety move, right? In retrospect of that. Rook f1. So on queen f6, we can play queen f2 without knight g6, because here we just take. So that probably explains rook f1. But black carries on aggressively here without queen f6, and still with the theme of the h4 pawn. So this is quite an interesting idea now, which apparently shouldn't be terminal, right? Black has an idea based on h4, which apparently is not terminal. Black, this is the main line of the game now. Black to play here. Oh, I'm not typing it properly. Black to play here based on h4. Find resources based on h4. What would you play in this position? It's a tricky little move that was played. Any ideas? I'm not saying it's crushing, it was played, but it might not be technically crushing. Okay, knight d5, yeah, knight d5, because queen's exerting an influence over here. Now if it was taken, then apparently it's just a draw here. Black will just grab a draw probably, yeah, with perpetual check. Anyway, it wasn't taken. Knight e2 was played. And now we have queen f6 threatening mate in 1. Queen f2 protecting h4. But now, yeah, there's some trouble brewing in this position. Black now plays the tricky knight e3. The queen can't take without allowing queen takes h4 mate. So he's hitting that rook. The rook goes to g1, which unfortunately it seems drops c2. So black now takes on c2. But isn't this the end of the attack? Maybe it should have been. White should have perhaps taken on g4 here, it seems, and brought the king out even for a bit, because white does have the h pawn as a trump card. But no, Vichy plays knight f4. Not necessarily terminal mistake. Rook takes g1. Queen takes g1. Now both sides are emerging with a trump card to celebrate. If black knocks out these two pawns, then this a pawn, and if white knocks out this, then this h pawn. So that's the gist of what happens now. Queen takes b2, trying to make way for the a pawn. Yeah. Also protecting f7. Knight takes h5, trying to make way for the h pawn. Check. King e7. Knight h7. Threatening a mate in 2 with check and then mate, by the way. So safety point here. King d7 is played. We have h5. Now we have queen e2, which seems to, well, it threatens here, this pawn principally, as well as this one. And now here, perhaps it seems it's important to maybe consider getting some sort of perpetual check or agreeing to a draw here, because this is getting scary, right? Vichy played actually king h4. Now maybe it seems queen takes f7. If white is interested in a draw, then just allow black this position, which looks terrifying, but we are holding the g4 square, so king h4 doesn't actually lose apparently. If black wants a perpetual check, of course black can get it now, right? But it's not entirely mating or anything. But who wants that position anyway? But anyway, so king h4 was played, and we have now check, which unfortunately this is something unfortunate about this position is evolving, that the white king is going in front of the pawn. This is generally a bad idea. If you want a pass pawn, you don't want it blocked by your own king, because this one's running without any obstacles. This one's now got the king to get past. We have check here, and now queen takes. Knight f6 check does get the queen back. It wasn't just the queen blunder. But we have this position now after king f8 where black's a pawn is pretty fast here. It has to be said. And also the knight's attacked. Yeah. So we have knight f6. So the knight's not going to be taken. The a pawn makes a running dash for it. a5. And one problem with, say, king g5 here, because we might want to unblock this h pawn, is black then, well, black is even not obliged to do this. Black is not obliged to do that. Black could actually just carry on with his a pawn here. Because as soon as h7 happens, it's then we play king g7 and black's winning this position. Yeah, this is unfortunate because actually the other thing about this, by the way, worthy of note here, is that black should actually wait for the pawn to get to h7. If black is too keen to play king g7 here, then white's actually winning with knight e8 check. Funny enough. Check. And if here, e5. Takes. Knight e4. This is like becoming some sort of composition. You might wonder why on earth is white winning. Let's just check this out. Yeah, white's winning this position because the pawn is not queening, and the king is more aggressive. So yeah, there's a way of actually winning this for white on the immediate. This is technical stuff. So this position, it seems king g7 is winning for white. Miracle. Yeah. So black, though, yeah, just as I say, plays a4 here. That's winning for black because there's no way for the knight to stop the pawn here. If we tried something like this, let's just try something like this. Black just makes it go for it. The pawn is queening. Okay, so in the game, King H7 was played, which really doesn't help anything, particularly with respect to this pawn queening. The king's still in the way. So A4 was played here, and yeah, it's so quick, this A pawn with this king in the way of the pawn in this position. White resigns here. If we run this through, H6, how do we get the king? How do we get the king out of here to unblock the pawn? I mean, seriously, how do we get the king out of here? We have to sort of get the king out of F8 first to get G7, right? If we play here, A2, okay, we're getting a tense position. And if here, this is getting tense. Oh man, unbelievable. No, there's two ways of winning this. This is unfortunate. This is really unfortunate stuff, I've got to say, because the black queens check. Then we have knight F6 check, and you might think, well, white's going to queen, but unfortunately, King E7 here, and white is losing because it's going to be queen takes F6 time. Yeah, we can just take on F6 now and have a winning position there with the extra knight. Yeah, it just doesn't work out. Yeah, it just doesn't work out. So this is a tricky way to lose the game. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, it's all losing for white, this position. Is anyone not convinced? Have I said something which wasn't convincing about this? It's a wild game, wild finish, but unfortunately the A pawn is pretty quick. I don't know what other generalizations you would like me to say about this. I don't know. It was just a crazy game and a crazy finish. What do we learn from it? I don't know. Chess is too complicated. I mean, it's just mega complex. Watch out for the passed pawns in the end game. Don't block your own passed pawns. You can make any sort of generalizations, whatever helps. Okay, I don't know. The king's just in front of the pawn. Some of the variations, they work out for white, funny enough. The black king was cautious not to quickly go to G7. Anyway, it's been nearly 2 hours of this, so yeah. I haven't got any other interesting games to show, I think. So until next week. So if you liked any of this, please like the video. Yeah. And see you next week. So remember to like the video. Yeah. So see you next week. Have a good week. Thanks very much. I'll say that on Play Chess as well. I'm going to stop this engine now. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much again.